Hello, everyone. Thanks for coming. My name is Taylor Brownlow. I'm head of data and product at Count. Count, as I'm sure you guys know, is a collaboration data tool. So it's like a combination of BI tools, SQL IDE in big ultimate canvas. I'm joined today by Sara Sabzikari, who's a data analyst at Lockbox. Sara's story is really fantastic. I'm excited to have her on. I'll let her introduce herself in a moment, but I just wanted to give a bit of context about today's session. So Sara and I were speaking a few weeks ago. A lot of what she was telling me about how the team is using Count reminded me of a bigger discussion that's been going on in data about how to make sure our data teams are impactful, focused on the right things, continuing to add impact. And so I thought Sara had some really great things to share about how her team at Lockbox is doing that. And it's important to share these kinds of stories. So that's a bit of motivation for today. But Sara, thanks for coming. How are you doing?
Yeah, doing well. Thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to this.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, it's gonna be great. I thought maybe we could start. Just tell us a little bit more about Lockbox and maybe what it's like, the data team there.
Yeah, definitely. So Lockbox is a fintech company. It's a startup or scale up, depending on who you ask and what your definition is. So we primarily work within financial well-being. We build products that help users get access to richer financial opportunities and just a richer life in general. So what the actual products do is that it helps users build their credit scores, their credit history, also their financial literacy as well. And yeah, that's the theme or the vision that the product revolves around. In terms of the data team, there's about 5 data analysts within Lockbox. We've also got a data engineer who sits primarily in the tech function. And we kind of function as a hybrid team. So we've got central data analysts that they take on urgent requests. They help with the data modeling. And then we've got embedded analysts that sit in different departments or squads or projects. And I'm one of the embedded analysts. So I sit close to marketing, also do financial modeling for the commercial team and also product as well. So yeah, it's a bit about Lockbox.
Embedded in a few teams, then sounds like.
Yes, yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Oh, nice. Yeah, maybe we can also cover the tech stack. Might be a good place to go to next. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. It's evolved for the last year. So I joined Lockbox over a year ago. It was last April. And when I joined, we were just introducing Count into our tech stack. And since then, it's changed. So what we do currently have is we have our cloud data warehouse. We've got a desktop SQL editor, of which I really rarely use now for obvious reasons, because I've got Count. And also we had a few BI tools here and there. So we had a Tableau subscription, of which we've moved away from because we moved all of our reports over to Count. So that's pretty much the tech stack. We're also building out our data warehouse using dbt. So that's a new project that we're launching as a team. So yeah, I hope that covers it.
Small project of getting into dbt world. Sure, it's not daunting at all. Very nice.
Yeah, I don't think we fully see, like we're just about seeing the full breadth of the project now, and it's yeah, definitely more than just upskilling. But yeah, it's a good one.
Oh, very cool. Thanks for that intro. Yeah, I think you kind of unique position in that you started around the same time Count did. I don't know, maybe you could tell a little bit about how you first were introduced to Count and what that was like.
Yeah, I think I had like the less conventional introduction to a tech tool. It was actually just before I started at Lockbox. I went to a lunch with my team just to get to know everyone. And I remember they were raving about this platform called Count. I thought that's a really good name for an analytics platform. And yes, they were trying to explain it. And it's very different to obviously the IDEs that I've worked with before. And so I remember going home and Googling Count and seeing the demo and thinking, okay, this is very innovative. Clearly, I want to know what it is that they use it for. And I didn't quite get that picture yet because we were just introducing Count into the platform. And so once I started, actually the first tool that I really got going on was Count, because it was just so effective at onboarding me and helping me get to know the schema, kind of what are the main reports, what are the main joins that we do. It allowed me to really have much fuller visibility as to what data at Lockbox looks like. So that was my first experience with Count during lunch, and then actually tried it.
Yeah, I think that that experience of being new and trying to dive into the data and everything is something anyone who's been a data team had to do. I think I've had to do that many times, and it takes like months until you feel comfortable doing that. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe you could. I think everyone probably on the call has had that experience, so maybe you could talk through a bit more detail about what that meant or why that was different to other times that you've done that kind of thing before.
Yeah, I can actually also show you what it was like, if that works. So when I've worked on like different types of data before, it was I worked in the government with antimicrobial sales data. I then moved over to an ag tech startup with looking at poultry data, like production data. And I know how painful it is to start in a whole new domain as well as a whole different business, and looking at, you know, different data, different production systems. So basically, Jamie, he did a really good job with one of our analysts at the time, and he said, here's a bunch of tables that we use or queries that we use for our reports. Just dive into it, and you can use Count. We have some interesting features. So I'm just going to share my screen and show you what this was like a repeated process for me for like a week. So what we have here is it was a query that would build a view that would then feed into Tableau, and we would build reports on Tableau. And it was the most commonly used one. There were so many different tables that fed into it. So I originally was reading through the query and making sticky notes. And then Jamie said, actually, you can just pull it to the side and split out the CTEs. And so I was able to see there was more transparency on what I was actually feeding into the model. I could document it in a way that I understood, and I could reflect back to it. And so what it eventually looked like with these queries was, basically my own kind of documented memo board of what sort of tables feed in for what reasons. I was able to visualize, see the frequency of different, products that we have to offer for our users. And yeah, that was what the onboarding process looked like, which isn't very similar to what it was like before in other organizations or companies that I worked at.
Yeah, I really like this example. I think as it brings up this concept of transparency, which I think will come up a lot in today's session, and it feeds back to kind of the original idea around, focusing on impact. I think having these silos of information and silos of knowledge really gets in our way of trying to be effective. Obviously, the faster you're able to understand these models, the faster you can be effective, the more the whole team can be effective. I think, not just for onboarding, but we've all had that experience of, if that query and Jamie runs that, manages that query and he's not there and that's erroring, you still need to go in and figure out what happened, even if you've been there for like a year. So having this transparent space to break things down feels like a really big way for you guys to just try to, one fewer thing that's in your way, and you guys can just focus on what you need to do, like, in this case, understanding the data much more quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. And that actually reminds me, on so many occasions where we've had an important report that gets sent out on a daily basis and the visuals aren't generating, there's an error. I know the dread of needing to go in and debug something that someone else has built, and now it's not as scary and it's not as dread with or doom that you feel. So yeah, it's a really good point. I agree.
Oh, nice. Yeah, and then I guess kind of as we moving ahead, so you got onboarded, and then you're a full-fledged member of the team now. And what were some of the challenges that you were facing then?
Yeah, good one. So because we were just about integrating Count into our stack, I was still confronted with a lot of the typical problems that a fragmented analytics workflow would have. And there were two main things that jumped out for me. One was it's very difficult to maintain focus when you have to manage things like, downloading things locally, importing them into a new environment, analyzing them, downloading, iterating through that process. And so I know when you feel kind of frustration, sometimes anxiety when you have to use all these different tools and things don't go well. And so your focus ends up getting fragmented, and deep work and focus is really important to me. And I think for problem solving for all of us, it's really, really important. So that was one main pain point. And then the other was collaborating, and the stakeholder, whether it was a technical one or a non-technical one, who would depend on you to transfer these insights and knowledge, they were also on the receiving end of this fragmented workflow and just a lack of ease of distributing insights. And so those are the two main pain points. And at the time, I kind of maybe selfishly, I don't know, I decided I'm not going to use the traditional workflow. I'm just going to stick with Count. And yeah, I think it gave me like positive experience with onboarding and starting in a new business, because I felt like I was really able to focus on the insights and I didn't have to just try and learn this new tool or whatever, because this is pretty intuitive. So yeah, I hope that answers your question. I have an example of a situation like that as well, like the difference between old tech stack, new tech stack, if you'd like.
Yeah, definitely. I think the one term that I always think of with the fragmented workflow is the cognitive load of trying to maintain, where is the data? How do I get it from this tool to this tool? And it is, as you say, like such a distraction. So yeah, it completely resonates. And I think that frustration like compounds, and we don't often think about the impact of that fragmented workflow on the stakeholder who's receiving it, who is also even more confused. So I think you could just imagine that getting amplified as you go down the funnel. So yeah, I should say that resonated, but yeah, let's dive into an example. I think would be cool.
Yeah, I think that just as you said that, it made me think also, before I pull it up, how many stakeholders will just say, like, can you put it in a Google Sheet? Because it's just much more intuitive for them to use. And even that process in itself, it's so much nicer to have a tool that users can intuitively navigate, because they're used to things like other canvassing and whiteboarding tools as well.
Yeah. And I think the transparency point as well, I think Google Sheets is, well, and Excel in general is transparent because you can always see all the data. So I think there's always that kind of gut instinct to gravitate towards that because you trust it more, because you can see it. And I think, again, just back to the first point, but yeah,
trust it more. And I also found that some stakeholders weren't as scared of the tables on Count as well. Actually, they were reading the SQL because it's a pretty intuitive, obviously, language. But yeah, sorry, I was fangirling over the fact that we don't have to use Google Sheets as much. I will pull something up. So as I mentioned before, I work closely with kind of maintaining and building out our LTV analysis, the customer lifetime value analysis. And so I've pulled out like a mock report just with like generic data as to what these would normally look like. So yeah, I've got control cells that allows users to filter for whatever different types of segmentation that you guys are used to doing. And this is what the report would look like, regardless of like, what tool we would express it on. But what actually the difference between using Count and moving everything over to Count was that this is what the workflow looked like before Count. When I first started and I was onboarded onto LTV and getting to know the methodology, we had to query our data. We then had to pull it into a notebook. And then within the notebook, there was a very linear kind of structured way to analyze it. Many, many, many lines of code. Then we would pull it into a Google Sheet, and then we would distribute it to our stakeholders. Now, I just do all of that in Count. And for a while, I wanted to move this over to Count. And I'm sure that many analysts have had this experience before where they get loads of questions from the stakeholder, like, okay, where did you get this number from? How does this, what is the logic behind this methodology? And you have to flick through so many, it's just not transparent for them. It's not clear. And I think a lot of stakeholders are also capable of understanding the methodology as well. So yeah, now there's really no other way to communicate this. It's literally just moved to Count, and the analysis actually looks something like this. So previously, where there were loads of lines of code, how to store the data to move it from one tool to another, and yeah, this is what it looks like now.
I see. It's kind of hard to feel like the screenshots don't do the complexity justice of like just going from an IDE and probably some query you have saved on your desktop or something, moving it over. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and what do you think? So that feels like, obviously you kind of mentioned the where we talked about the cognitive load that this kind of workflow requires, the old way of doing that. Have you? Sorry, I think about how to articulate this. You've used a term I really like, which is, no, I can't remember. Just being on the edge of your abilities, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder if you could talk a bit about that.
Yeah, definitely. I think with the thing that I love about data is you're constantly learning, and you kind of have to accept that if you're working within data, or to be honest, any sort of industry or domain that's constantly moving and adapting. And I really now sincerely believe that we have really low standards when it comes to our workflows, because there are just so many tools out there, and there are so many different workflows, ways of working, and most of them are fragmented. And so the reason why I originally brought up, being able to focus in the cognitive load and being at the edge of your ability is, I sincerely believe that if you want to solve a problem that's complex and it's not, it's an indeterminate problem, that it's very difficult to define a very simple and clear methodology to answer this particular problem. You don't want to spend your time moving in between different tools. You don't want to have to debug things on different platforms or environments. And it really strips away your ability to focus and concentrate on one thing at a time and to lean into that deep work. So yeah, I want to, like in many parts of life, like I want to adopt things that enable me to be at the edge of my ability, because I know that's how I'm going to grow and learn and develop and, pick up the other additional skills that will take me from step A to step B. There was an analysis that I worked on where I was actually confronted with this, and it was to measure the halo effect of YouTube ads. And to put it simply, I'm sure like everyone can relate to this. They see a YouTube ad for a product and they don't click on the link within the YouTube platform. They open a new tab and they search the product name or the business name. Mm. And so our marketing team, when we first experimented with YouTube ads, we intuitively knew, and I'm going on a bit of a tangent, but trust me with this one. We knew intuitively that, or we felt intuitively that the YouTube ads would lead to conversions on organic channels, as people would jump to tabs, or they become more aware of the brand. And so we wanted to explore if that existed, if that was actually happening, if there was any way to quantify it. And as you can imagine, if you're running an experiment for 2 weeks worth of data, especially depending on the budget that you have, there's not a lot of data to work with. And in this situation, being new to marketing, I was at the edge of my ability. I didn't know anything at that point about marketing. And I had to really collaborate with others in the team, the marketing department, to really understand how to approach this problem. And it also involved research. What I wanted to do was just come up with a simple methodology to answer this crucial question, of which the business needed to answer in order to invest in this type of marketing campaign. I can show it as well.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah,
let me just get it up.
You've taught me a lot about halo effect as well, so it's educating on all fronts here. It's good.
Yeah, I mean, it was when they first mentioned halo effect, I thought, what is that? But once you know what it is, it intuitively makes sense.
Yeah.
Let's pull it up. So this is, I think this was like maybe 2-3 months into my time at Lockbox. And yeah, so I built out, what is the problem statement? I did some research. What was the format of our ads? What are the primary and secondary success metrics that we're looking for? And I built out this canvas. And so there's 2 different ways for me, the methodologies that I developed to determine whether there was a halo effect or not. and presented both of them. And we walked through it as a team, as a squad, to look at the results of this experiment. And it generated so many other questions that then led on to new experiments. But I'll just show you what the analysis looked like. So normally what I do is I pull in my raw data, which at the time we were exporting from CSV and putting it into Count, and then querying locally. And then also getting the conversion data from our data warehouse, visualizing it, experimenting with, what sort of methodology do I want to develop or analysis to define this. And this is how I built it out. This is what it looked like. And it's definitely not what it looked like initially. I can tell you that. So I had no idea what to do.
Yeah, I think it's a good, maybe talk us through the process of building this kind of thing and how you got to this point.
Yeah, let me see. So let's see, what did it look like initially? Let's take it here. So yeah, this is me kind of work like it was like a workshop. I would also bring in some other analysts. I would show the team, this is what the data looks like. And then as things developed, I think I pulled more structure into it. So you can see that actually I decided to approach this analysis in this way, doing a correlation plot, and also hypothesis testing as well. And then eventually it led to the final product that you saw. So yeah, I think it started to slowly take shape, and yeah, that's how I approached it.
Yeah, I really like what you said about this concept of nonlinear, because I think we think about nonlinear a lot of times in data or even analysis, right? Like your analysis in the way that you think isn't nonlinear, but I think also this shows that the whole process isn't as well, that you might, you need space to like, oh, over here I'm like testing the data quality, and over here I'm playing with these two different approaches to this model and how this is going to work, and experimenting with this, and over here I'm playing with visuals and what's the best way to lay this out, and just having the space to kind of iterate in all these different fronts at the same time, and in whatever way organically makes sense to you. I think that that really comes across in this, which I really like about that example.
Exactly that. It was, especially when you said like customized. I could customize it to what I needed rather than trying to put everything into a Google sheet or I don't think you would build a dashboard for this. I mean, I'd hope not.
Yeah.
Yet to be challenged for that, but yeah, I agree.
Well, my views on dashboards, so I guess my answer on that. Yeah, and you mentioned this idea of bringing other people into this and kind of getting feedback and that kind of thing. I wonder if you could speak a bit more of how this works with others within the data team, beyond the data team. What that looks like.
Yeah, definitely. I think feedback loops is like it's a big blessing in anything that you're doing, especially as an analyst. And I think there's two core feedback loops that I think Count enables for us as a team, and also as a business, as a wider business. The first is within our own analysis, so being able to you switching from querying your data, cleaning it, visualizing it, going back because you realize actually I'm pulling in data that I initially tried to filter out for this particular segment of users, and so because it's so non-linear, because it's a canvas, and I can move cells around, I can branch off into a whole new analysis. Then I have feedback loops there. I have feedback loops between the visual tools. I've got Python, so I can do more complex analyses. And then I have SQL. And then on top of that, because, akin to like other platforms like, Figma and Miro, you can actually see people use the tool. So I often, if I'm struggling with querying something and I don't understand the context of the data enough, I will pull in members of the team, the analytics team, and we're able to follow each other's logic and learn much, much better. Like I think we solidify the learnings from collaborating much more than we would if, I would say, can you help me, fix this query? And then, it's pretty urgent. So I'm like, okay, I'll come back to this in 2 hours once I send this report off to understand how they did it. I never did, let's be honest. So, and the other feedback loop is with the business stakeholders. And someone mentioned something the other day about heat maps, and then it reminded me of the fact that we were going to speak. And it's nice to see users interact with the dashboard. And I think I kind of create a subconscious heat map of the things that they're interacting with.
Yeah.
And yeah, so we have feedback loops from the business. They can confirm the assumptions that we have. They can confirm whether the data, essentially the product that we're building, whether it's a report or an analysis, is answering their questions. And at the end of the day, just to put it really simply, I feel like I'm doing my job better. I can do my job better as a result of that. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think those are both really good points. I think, especially when you consider the kind of default way of doing both of those. Well, all three of them, you mentioned kind of three different feedback loops, I guess there, and one like personally process oriented, one getting feedback from your peers and kind of analytical feedback, and then another getting external context and ultimately business feedback. I think the alternatives to those are very asynchronous, very I'll just send you a Slack message. I hope I get to it. And often, again, like very fragmented. You're never going to see the whole thing. So I think even in the example you gave of trying to give feedback on someone else's query, you might just be giving pure SQL feedback, right? Or kind of an approach like that. When really, if you step back and knew what they were trying to do, then you could say, oh, actually, no, this is the wrong approach entirely. What you really want to do is this, but you kind of need to see all of it at once. And I think a lot of what we have in place, data teams don't let us do that. You just kind of see little windows of time and bits of information at once. So I think those feedback loops are so critical to how data teams work. So just having something that helps like facilitate that, feels like a big step. But obviously, you guys have to actually do the work. You can have a tool that lets you do it, but I think there's a lot that you guys have done to make that work, to kind of create a culture where that feedback is accepted and valued, and it's something that perpetuates and continues itself forward. So
actually, that you saying that reminds me of the I think probably a lot of people can appreciate this, but working with the dev team, they know the data so well because obviously they build out the logic to get it into the structure that it is for us to analyze. For the devs that I work with, they also love using Count as well, because they're able to bring in their context and maybe challenge some of the assumptions that we've made about the products, how the product works, or the type, how we, I don't know, a particular field. What does status mean in this table? I think it also in a way has fed back knowledge to them as to how we use the end, the data in its state when it comes to us. And so we refine, because of that transparency, we refine as a business, what should our logic, what should a definition of a particular field be, or a particular type of user, and is that integrated into the logic of our data as well? So they really also benefit from it, I feel. And I think that's just one example of many areas across the business that we've experienced that particular thing.
Yeah, that's a good point. I was speaking to someone the other day, and they're saying they have their kind of data engineering team actually gets to speak to the stakeholders, and that's kind of 2 or 3 levels removed. And it's almost like they would never be speaking to each other. They're so far away in the data pipeline, one end and the other, but they're actually able to just, how much value in just having, okay, I need this, okay, I can build this. Why don't these 2 people actually, speak together more frequently? That's a good point. I know you have another good example. I wanted to touch on this idea of prototyping as we're talking about feedback loops and again, also trying to be really efficient with your time. And I think one of the ways teams waste time, and maybe you could kind of give more concrete examples of this, is building the wrong things. Like I see a lot of stuff out there about how to be more efficient and things like that, but to me, it comes back to like the most efficient thing is to not waste your time building the wrong things. Exactly. I think prototyping is a really common sense way to do that. And so I don't know if you could talk through how you guys approach prototyping.
Yeah, definitely, 100%. We have saved so much time just getting the stakeholder involved from the beginning of building out a report. This is an example of, so we wanted to create reports, and these reports are important. We wanted to make sure that they were presenting the right information and narrative as well, so things couldn't be misconstrued. And so there's a template, there's like a sea of templates to help with this, but I chose this particular template in Count to structure how I would actually start building the report. So understand, what is it that this member of the, I don't know, marketing or product team, what do they want to get from the report or the dashboard? How do they want any alerts? What frequency will they check it? Are there any other success metrics that we would use to determine whether it was used the way that we intended to? And so we would get together. We got together in a call. It was half an hour. It was a half-an-hour call, and I put some preliminary bits down of what I understood about this project, and then we just went through it together. And I built out examples. And this is what by prototyping, like this is how we approach it. This is like a kind of a mock version of what do we want a 1 month report to look like, 3 month or 6 month or whatever it is. And yeah, just having something to look at for the stakeholder meant that they could visualize the process a lot earlier, and they could we were able to reduce the delay in the types of questions that we would get later on in the process, bring it to the front of the the end-to-end process, and yeah, just throw sticky notes on there. I was able to just, like I mentioned, with the heat map, just watch what it is that they were hovering over, what sort of insights or sections of the report were they interested in, and so this is a pretty good example, I feel, as to how we save time with building dashboards or reports that will get used, to put it simply.
Yeah, I think it's a good point, kind of saving time. I think there's a like logical fallacy of like, oh, this is an additional step, so it feels like it's going to add time to my overall process. But I think, yeah, as you say, you do this for 30 minutes, maybe sit down, go through it, and then the time that you save on the back end, because you're not rebuilding everything from scratch, is massive. And I think there's a huge part about setting expectations around this. Prototyping isn't just about getting to the right thing, but I think there's always this surprise when someone sees a dashboard for the first time. It's like, oh, it's done. Here it is. Here's the final thing, and so you just have this kind of shock. But I don't know. What is this? This is new. And so bringing them in to be like, no, this is what you should expect. That's already going to be so much better. Just to have that experience of like, I know where things are going to be because I helped design it in that sense. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm a big proponent of prototyping. So,
do you know what that reminds me of? I think I was reading a book called Win Without Pitching, and I realized that as analysts or report builders or creators, we've gotten into the habit of pitching a report. So we build it, and then we say, here you go, and it's as if we're like, this is our pitch. This is our product. We want you to love it. And what we should be doing throughout the process is inviting them in and collaborating and having a conversation rather than just one pitch at the end. Because we're essentially building, we're creating a product, something that will be used. So yeah, that was just reminded me of that.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point. I always like to just think, what if I were them and I was trying to use data in the same way that we kind of force them to use data, and it's just like I have to send some request in a form, and I hope you know what I mean, and then a week later I get something back, and it's kind of wild to think that we would be using data in that way. But yeah, I think it's that's a really good way of putting it.
That's a good exercise. Put yourself in their shoes, and it's a really good exercise.
Yeah, try to use data in a dashboard that you share. That's right. Yeah. Well, very nice. I'm just trying to see if there's anything else we said we wanted to cover, but maybe it's good then to cover off from your perspective. Then we've covered on quite a few points on the transformations. We talked a lot about workflow, obviously making sure the analysts like yourself can actually do great work, focus on solving the right problems, getting rid of the things that get in your way of collaboration, working more closely with your team and stakeholders. But yeah, is there anything kind of, or what would you say are the biggest things that are different now from how you work now to maybe when you started a year ago at
Yeah.
Lockbox? What's that delta for you?
Yeah, I think, well, it definitely looks different because we've moved all of our reporting away from Tableau to Count because it made sense given the benefits of the platform and the type of work that we do. I would say because, and I think it really does come down to being able to, we have the space to problem solve, and therefore I think you're working in easy mode to problem solve more effectively. You're getting rid of the barriers that would waste your time. And so what I've noticed in the team, and also like especially myself, we can really focus on, we feel more embedded in the problem, and it means that we are more motivated to go and explore different methodologies, like different ways to analyze this, different perspectives. And part of that also comes down to collaborating with the stakeholder as well. So I think we've just become much more competent analysts as a result of it as well. I think it's nice to be able to log on and have all the context you need in one environment because you've pulled in all the necessary people from the beginning, if you've done it right, to provide the information that you need. And so you're just much more well equipped. I think that's the best way to put it. You're more well equipped. We're much more well equipped. And at this stage, if we can't answer a question effectively, it just means that maybe we didn't go through the feedback loops, the necessary feedback loops from the beginning, but that was already at our disposal. So yeah, I think there's, I guess, two main things. One, everyone in the business works with Count now when it comes to data, and the data that we distribute. And two, we're so much more effective with our time. Like we're much more efficient with our time. And I think I'd like to speak on behalf of the team. I think we enjoy it more as a result of it as well.
Yeah, every time I speak to you guys, it does feel like you're having fun. So that's
Yeah.
it comes across this side. Yeah, I think it's really well said. Yeah, like I said at the start, I was really excited to share your story. I think you guys are approaching analytics differently, but I think it's nice that it's not a huge shift, a kind of monumental. It's almost just kind of you're orienting yourself around, yeah, around impact, right? Around how to make the biggest difference. And for you, that's meant, changing how you collaborate with others and making sure all the roadblocks that get in your way of being good problem solvers are removed. So yeah, I think it's really wonderful what you guys have done. So yeah, just say thank you. If there are any questions for Sara, please feel free to drop them in the comments. Otherwise, we'll probably try to wrap up. Maybe looking ahead, what's next? You mentioned the DBT project. Is there anything else coming up?
Yeah, I think the DBT project is probably the biggest one for us. So we're aware of like the full spectrum of capabilities and features that Count has as a platform, and we're really excited to start bringing in our DBT models into the canvases, editing them, exploring them, collaborating on them. And yeah, I think that's probably where it's the next stage of growth for us as a data team, and we'll have significant impacts across the whole business. So that's what's next.
Amazing. Well, yeah, I'm excited to see it.
Yeah.
Well, it looks like no questions right now, but feel free to get in touch if you do have any questions. Sara, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Thank you for putting together those canvases for us and being willing to share it. And thank you for your time. It's been great.
Yeah, my pleasure. It's been great chatting to you, Taylor. Thanks.
Thank you all. Have a good day.